There was one move made last night at the NBA draft the Bucks cannot ignore. We tell you what that move was and why. Coming up next on Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia, joined once again by Camille Davis. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day each and every day. You can find me on the Bucks Radio Network. You can hear Camille on the Locked On NBA show and the Technical Foul podcast as well. We had a handful of comments too, very concerned, Camille, that we had 3 or 4 straight shows with me and someone else. So just to put everybody's mind at ease, Camille is back, was dealing with a very nasty bug, under the weather, and still crawling there. But we get Camille back today to recap the draft. Round 1 of the draft last night, a very boring night. You know, like I think you saw the moves made over the weekend and all the hype coming into the offseason that this is going to be the craziest offseason ever in terms of player movement. And, you know, seeing Kevin Durant traded leading into the draft, I think raised our expectations for, here we go. Brooklyn's got 5 first. They're going to make a ton of trades. We're going to see other players moved. And it just didn't happen. So scale of 1 to 10, where would you rate the overall experience of the draft last night?
Honestly, I'd probably go like a 6.5, 7. Like, we didn't get that aspect of it, which I did think we would get a little bit more of, which would have probably pushed it to like a 10 for me. But the amount of trades within the draft and trying to keep up with who went where and wait, so whose pick is this actually? And they gave up what to move up 3 spots, and seeing just how much people were paying to move up to get their guys. Seeing Yang go at 16 to Portland, a team that already has 3 centers when they invested draft capital in one last year, seeing what New Orleans was doing. So for me, I think the excitement of the draft came a lot more from like the wait, what just happened? Or like this, what are you expecting to do going forward with this team? And less of like the actual player movement outside of Mark Williams being traded to Phoenix shortly before they drafted a center, which again was like okay, this must be insurance for each other at this point, because we know Mark Williams has an injury history here. So yeah, the draft overall, like halfway through, you mentioned I've been under the weather, like my head started to hurt again, like halfway through, and I was like, oh no, I got to try to finish this draft. I barely made it.
You really don't.
Yeah, by the end, I was like, I probably could have went to sleep for the last few picks here, but I stuck it through. Maybe that's why I'm feeling not the best this morning. But yeah, I'll probably give it the 6.5, 7.
Yeah, I was in like the 5, 6 range. A couple surprises. It was chalk through the first basically 6 picks. And the trades, like, we're going to get to the team that we teased. You got to keep an eye on, and here's why. But I'm glad you bring it up. It's certainly not a new conversation, but the player wears the hat of the team he's never going to play for. And I think they even brought it up on the broadcast as well. Somebody else was asking me the same thing too, of like, why do they do this? Like, well, these trades are made and they have to be finalized in the new league year. So technically it's not this team making the pick, but that's the problem. Is we've discussed this before. Like, number one, the draft being less than a week after your season ends.
That part.
I mean, ideally, the draft is late July, where you just give it more and more distance from the regular season, or the postseason, I should say, ending. And it's after free agency, like every other sport does. The problem with that is, and why I don't think we'll ever see that, is Summer League. And the money that the league makes off of Summer League, unless you say, hey, let's move Summer League to August. All right, maybe, but that's the real root of the issue here. Is you got Summer League in mid-July, so we got to get these young guys to their teams in time to participate in Summer League. But I think we'd all be best served if this draft was late July, early August.
I agree, because it's not enough time to breathe. Like, we just watched the Thunder have their parade on what, Monday, Tuesday, and then it's like the draft is like
Tuesday, yeah.
shortly thereafter. Like
By
the
the
timeline.
way, Camille, I mean, I know they're more your generation than mine and Frank's. That's a very weird the whole deal by the Thunder, the celebration, the way they handled winning afterwards, where it was a very millennial, like, whatever we
Okay,
want.
wait. I don't think that they're millennial. I think they're a little too
No,
young.
you're right. Yeah,
They're a
they're
little too
not.
young to be in my group. But you could tell, like, none of them really drank alcohol. Like, it was a very subdued
No.
soccer. They didn't know how to open the champagne bottles. They were asking Alex Caruso, like, can you teach me? The one millennial, well, kind of millennial, I guess, in the room would be Alex Caruso there. But yeah, I think it's all just the timeline is too tight. And maybe the league would be open to moving it to summer league to August, because when you think about Vegas in August, you don't really want to be there. So
I mean, you don't want to be there in July either.
exactly, which is part of the reason why it's like, Vegas loves having events come during these months when normally people don't want to be there. So maybe there could be a discussion about that, and then you can roll from summer league right into your training camp, so on and so forth. But yeah, the timing of it all is kind of strange. Also, one thing that was really strange for me in this draft, another team in the East, Brooklyn Nets, 5 first-round picks. Did you expect for them to actually make all 5 picks? Because I did not. And when I saw
Expected at least one move.
me too, and it did not
And
happen. And I was just like, wait, you're really going to roll with 5 rookies?
and not only that, but like, again, getting back to the previous discussion about, well, you can't be consummated until the league year. I at least expected to hear rumblings of, hey, Brooklyn's not going to keep this pick. It's actually going to move over here. And we heard none of that. So I'm very curious. Maybe something does trickle out of this guy was actually drafted for this team, and here's this deal that's consummated, because even though we heard none of that, I would still be very stunned if all 5 of those picks end up on the Brooklyn Nets this upcoming season.
Yeah, I would too. I was surprised they even drafted all 5 to begin with. I was like, is maybe one player going to be a stash or something like that? But from everything I've seen so far, it doesn't look like they're going in that direction. So really just shocked to see that's the way that things went with Brooklyn. And then New Orleans, as we mentioned, just some questionable decisions for me. Like, you trade for Jordan Poole right before the draft, but then you draft Jeremiah Fear. So now it's a Jordan Poole, Jeremiah Fears backcourt. Then you draft Derek Queen, but you have Zion. Like, I like Queen, but I don't like his fit next to Zion. But is this an insurance policy? And then of course they traded the 2026 first that is tied to us in a way as well, which also surprised me.
Yeah, we're gonna get there. So that's the move you got to keep an eye on. And Chris Herring, by the way, still reporting the Nets are going to keep all 5 of those picks. And oh, by the way, they have the 36th pick tonight too. So Brooklyn's going to be an interesting team to watch, but so are the Atlanta Hawks because of that move that Camille mentioned. We'll dig into the details coming up next. This next segment of Locked On Bucks is brought to you by Wayfair. There's nothing like stepping into your own outdoor space and feeling like you've escaped to a personal oasis. If you're wanting to update your patio this season, Wayfair has made it easy to turn it into a space that feels like yours. Comfortable, stylish, and ready for summer. They have everything you need to level up your outdoor space, whether it be conversation sets, outdoor bars, fire pits, hot tubs, gazebos, and even the perfect string lights to set the vibe. It's like giving your backyard the resort feel without the resort price tag. You can pick up a new dining set, some modern lounge chairs, and completely transform your outdoor space. Find your style. Maybe you already know it. If it's clean and modern, you'll be able to filter down to that exact look to find what fits your space and your budget. And the delivery is always fast, free, and hassle-free, even with larger items. So don't wait. Make your outdoor space your dream oasis today with Wayfair and enjoy it all summer long. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop a huge outdoor selection. That's wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. So I must ask, what are the New Orleans Pelicans doing exactly here? And anybody that met the Joe Dumars hire with a bit of a side eye, was pointing to last night and really the lead up to the draft to say, see, still not too sure about this. The big one, you mentioned some of the other moves that the Pelicans made. They get rid of CJ McCollum's expiring contract, and they bring in Jordan Poole, who is under contract for 1 season beyond that. So you're taking on $65 million when you had 30 plus that you were going to have coming off the books to give you some more flexibility. This all comes on the heels too, Camille. I think we talked about this earlier in the offseason of DeJounte Murray having some very interesting things to say about the Pelicans while he's still employed by the Pelicans. So some questionable moves there, but nothing in terms of questionable trades is going to top the draft day move they made last night to trade away an unprotected pick next season to move up 10 spots in this draft. And that unprotected pick is the worst of either theirs or the Bucks. And it goes to the Atlanta Hawks, who very early stages, but so far have had a pretty good offseason to basically buy low on Kristaps Porzingis to get their guys back healthy. And now they get this lottery ticket of next season's first round pick unprotected from a Pelicans team that doesn't have a great track record. And the draft, as you mentioned, of Patrick Queen, I think that signals you're probably going to look to move on from Zion Williamson. But at that point, you're rebuilding, I would say. And why would you trade away future draft capital, especially unprotected? But here's where it's interesting for the Bucks. And I know the everydayers, especially a lot of Bucks fans, hate when we point this out. We are frankly as annoyed as anyone else as we've gone through in the offseason of the constant wish casting to trade Giannis to other teams. But the Atlanta Hawks have been a team that have been linked to Giannis. Obviously, you go back to the draft day and how much they were in on him in 2013. And then the rumblings had started to come out in this offseason. We talked about it with Alex Saratzis, one of Giannis's agents, up for the president job with the Hawks. He didn't get it, but the Hawks were always one of those, keep an eye on Atlanta and what they're looking to do. And the other thing we talked about, I don't see Giannis asking for a trade, but I especially don't see him asking for a trade to a team that already has their guy in an established star where you're coming in as the 1B or you're coming in as a co-star. That's not the case right now with Atlanta. And you can point to Trae Young. It's not a, hey, whose team is this if Giannis arrives in that scenario? So that makes it interesting. And who knows if Trae Young is on the team beyond this season. But to make this move, Frank and I talked about this with potential Nets picks on the show yesterday too. The other big component to this is Atlanta saying, well, maybe if New Orleans is down this year and rebuilding, they're going to be bad. That could be a really good pick. The gap year that the Bucks have kind of put out there, what if they don't keep their guys and it's just Giannis and who? They're going to be bad. We get that pick. And what if that leads to a scenario where you get a couple of months into the season and Giannis says, this ain't working. This is, to be clear, this is neither of us wishing for this.
Correct.
But walking through the logic of the Hawks, what if that happens? We can turn to the Bucks and say, hey, you're off to a, let's say, 15-30 start. Time to tear it down. You can tear it down because we own your pick next year and we'll give it back to you as part of the package for that guy. So as soon as you saw that was the capital going to the Hawks, that radar immediately went off for me of, oh, it's a great asset, number one, by the Hawks, but that is also a two-pronged approach there.
Yeah, it's a two-pronged approach. And Atlanta's been a team, even before we got to the draft night, where I was like, before the Porzingis trade, where I was like, Atlanta might be a sneaky good team that people aren't talking about yet because they showed the flashes last year. And to your point about, it's a Trae Young's team. Like if Giannis did go down there, Trae Young. But one thing about Trae Young is that he's always liked himself to be a pass-first point guard. But the situation in Atlanta kind of required him to shoot a bit more and be that guy as well. And I feel like last year was the first year where you saw he kind of looked around and said, I got some guys here who I can kind of trust a bit more to get the ball to. And he was perfectly fine with facilitating. Like, I've loved Atlanta's offseason so far, even without the Giannis component. But to be able to have flexibility in your front office to pivot depending on how the season goes, depending on how other teams are playing is very, very important. And Atlanta put themselves in a position to be able to pivot and be able to make offers that could be interesting depending on how the season goes for the Bucks. But New Orleans giving up that 2026 unprotected first, that is a pick swap where Atlanta will now receive the more favorable pick between the Pelicans and the Bucks. One, if there's a world where both of those teams miss the playoffs, where both the Pelicans and the Bucks miss the playoffs. And I was looking at it initially of just like, okay, the Bucks are probably going to be able to keep this 2026 first for themselves. Because even with that said, I still would find it, I'd be surprised, I'll put it like that, if the Pelicans finish better than the Bucks do. So for the Pelicans to make this trade with Atlanta, to move up 10 spots, like I get it when you are in love with a prospect, when a guy is your guy, you do what you have to do to get them. But to me, it feels like New Orleans is being very aggressive and thinking a bit more highly of themselves in a loaded Western Conference than I think that they actually have equipped for them. Now, Atlanta is a team that I could honestly see finishing top 6 in the East if a lot of things break their way. Like, so for them, it's a really good move. And for the Bucks, it's something to just keep monitoring of, one, how does this 2026 pick unfold? Because the 2026 draft, from my understanding of it, given how many guys we saw go back to college after, this draft process in 25, the 26th draft class is going to be pretty stacked. That's a year where you do want to have a first round draft pick, which, I mean, yes, it sucks to not have one this year. You can always try to find a jewel in the draft, but next year's draft in particular is going to be one of those ones. So for the Bucks, like this season, how it gets off to, like if Giannis does ask out, Atlanta's a spot that could make some sense for him. And also just thinking about how the season plays out, like that 2026 first should be able to bring back some really good talent.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, there's a good chance both those teams, there's a chance both of those teams are missing the playoffs. It would have to be a nuclear setting for the Bucks to be.
Yeah, I think the Bucks do make the playoffs for the record.
Right, because of the outlook of the Eastern. Like, even if the Bucks have a terrible offseason, you're going to enter saying, well, look at the rest of the East. We got Giannis. We're at least a play-in tournament team. But that New Orleans one, I mean, to kick the can down the road like that in a draft class that, as you mentioned, look, a lot can change in 12 months, but it's viewed as a very strong draft class. You're in a very strong conference, too, if you're the New Orleans Pelicans. And you look at teams like the San Antonio Spurs, who had a much improved offseason, or adding to their team, I should say. And you get Victor Wembanyama back for the remainder of the season. Memphis, I think, had a pretty good night at the draft last night as well, even with losing Desmond Bane. They feel like, hey, we're going to be healthy next year. That's a team that is going to be picked to finish in front of the New Orleans Pelicans. Who knows what the Sacramento Kings do? The Mavs are on the fringe. They're clearly in front of you now with Kyrie back and the addition of Cooper Flagg. The Blazers are certainly acting like they're in win now mode with that acquisition of Jrue Holiday. And you mentioned Phoenix finally has more than shooting guards on their roster. So who knows? Maybe Phoenix stays in front of you as well. We heard the comments from Austin Ainge of, we're not going to tank this season in Utah. So there's a scenario where the New Orleans Pelicans are the worst team in the West, and you're trading away an unprotected pick next season. And if you're the Bucks, you got to be looking at it too, like, what are you doing? We could minimize the damage if we have a pick swap with you, because it's no threat of, I don't see Giannis asking out, and I especially don't see Giannis asking out to go to New Orleans, but come on, what are you doing here with this pick to the Atlanta Hawks? It's like if you were in a fantasy league and the league has to approve deals. That's what the Bucks would have been pushing for. Like, hang on, no, we need all GMs to cast a vote on this trade, because our vote is no.
Yeah, my vote would have been no too, but New Orleans was going to do what New Orleans was going to do. As you mentioned, Joe Dumars down there now. And again, the picks they make, the team doesn't make a lot of sense to me right now, but I'll give them a little benefit of the doubt because we haven't gotten to free agency yet. Things can change, of course, as we lead into the season, but yeah, keep everybody, Bucks fans, all the everydayers, keep your eyes on New Orleans this season, on Atlanta this season, of course, the Bucks, but like how those teams are playing is going to be important.
Not very high on Patrick Queen, Zion Williamson, Jordan Poole, Sadiq Bey lineup that they're throwing out there. DeJounte Murray as well, but yeah,
and he's not going to be back for a while. He's still recovering from his injury, so
yeah, it's a weird team, and it got even weirder last night. So no picks from the Bucks. They do have one tonight. What can we expect from the second round? We'll get into that discussion coming up next. Time to talk to you about our friends over at Skims. When I found out Skims making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I've heard so much about their quality from a number of people, so I had to give it a try. And I can tell you it lives up to the hype. You may always have issues with underwear, whether it be fit, comfort, or just finding the right style for yourself. Well, Skims is here to change all of that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with the perfect balance of comfort and style. I tried those boxer briefs and I'm hooked now. They're perfect for an active lifestyle. They move with you, never lose their shape, and stay in place all day. Whether you're working out or just running errands, they're the most comfortable and reliable underwear you'll ever own. Plus, the lightweight material feels amazing, almost like you're wearing nothing at all. So head over to Skims right now. Shop Skims Men's at skims.com. Let them know we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show from the drop-down menu. Skims Men's at skims.com. So the 47th pick in the draft tonight belongs to the Bucks. And look, we mentioned Brooklyn has the 36th pick tonight. Do you think the Bucks pick at 47, or do you see them either moving off of that pick or moving up in the draft?
There are some interesting guys that are still on the board where if the Bucks could move up earlier on in the first round, like to get a Rasheer Fleming, I'd be ecstatic about. But just given the assets the Bucks have, I'm not sure how likely it is for them to do that at this point. So for me, I'm going into tonight just expecting the Bucks to take somebody at 47. I think that there'll still be some interesting guys on the board there, especially after how the first round went, where there were some guys going a bit earlier than you thought, later than you thought. And I feel like the second round is going to be more of a crapshoot in that way as well, where there are enough guys, older guys here in the second round, because as mentioned, a lot of guys did go back to college after the draft process, the combine and all of that, because NIL makes college basketball a lot more feasible to stay in instead of being a second round draft pick where you don't play as much, where you can still go back to college, get paid, get your playing time, and possibly increase your draft status along the way. So personally, I think the Bucks select at 47, and I would expect that it's going to be an older player that can probably contribute in some way immediately to the team, not contribute in the sense of like what we got from Malcolm Brogdon or anything like that, but just someone who can come in and give you a few minutes a night.
Jonathan Givony has Rasheer Fleming as the number one pick of the second round going to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Is this the year too where it feels like this is the other annual discussion and study with the Bucks is Bucks fans just longing for them to take one of the local products? And last year you had are they going to take Tyler Kolak? We know they've worked out Cam Jones, and I believe Givony has Cam Jones going one spot in front of them tonight to what I think Orlando picks 46th. But I could definitely see a fit there with the team that they're trying to build if he's on the board.
Yeah, Cam Jones could give you a little something there. He's a little small. That's one of the knocks against him, but like he can be efficient. He can orchestrate an offense. Like he can make big shots down the stretch. Last season, the shooting kind of tailed off a little bit for him, but he also had a much, much larger role for Marquette, a lot more on the shoulders. So that's a little bit to be expected. He's going to have to show a little bit more defensively too. But again, we're talking about somebody being picked in the middle of the second round. So all of these prospects are going to have some type of flaw to their game. It's really about the fit. If you feel like they can come in and work, and Cam Jones, we know for sure is someone who is going to work. But some other names I'm also interested in around that spot. If he falls, I'll be surprised if he gets to 47, but I'm a big fan of Jameer Watkins from Florida State. Love the two-way aspect of it. Honestly, if I was a GM, you would know the type of players I'm going for. I'm always going to lean towards the two-way guys, bigger wings, and whatnot. So he's one of my guys. My favorite prospect is still Micah Peavy. I know the shooting concerns are there with him. If last year was a fluke, with how he actually shot the ball, with the defense for him is really real. But then, of course, you also have like a Chaz Lanier who can shoot really well. Kobe Brea, like there are some guys still on the board that if they make it to 47, Tyrese Proctor, you're going to have some interesting decisions to make.
Man, all these names, Camille. Somebody asked Frank and I too, and we had to like, yeah, that's Camille's background. That's not us. We're not the scouting guys. I couldn't tell you anything about these. I could tell you about guys that play for Arizona. Other than that, and shouts to Carter Bryant, who I think is going to be
what perfect situation for him too.
I think he's going to be like what Aaron Gordon eventually evolved into. That's what Carter Bryant is going to be. So yes, an ideal situation. The Gavoni does, and you mentioned Jameer Watkins. He's got him going to the Indiana Pacers, which great. Let's help him out even more, right? He has the Bucks staying at 47. We mentioned Cam Jones. He has going 46. He has the Bucks taking Javon Small, the point guard out of West Virginia, with that 47th pick, and he got Micah Peavy going one pick after that to the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah, give me Peavy. Javon Small has something there, but he's also a small guard. It's not just in name; it's also in stature. But Micah Peavy, he is a 6'6", 6'7". He's a big wing, defends really, really well. Again, the shooting part is the big question for him. He has a weird jumper. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. It's a little weird when you watch him shoot the ball. And he has not been efficient with it throughout most of his college career. But last year was the one year you saw him actually knocking it down at a pretty decent clip. So it's the defense for me first and foremost. And when I'm thinking of how this team fits, of course, we always know you want shooters around Giannis. You want shooters. So if what he did in his last year at Georgetown is real, or at least something that can be scalable, where he can continue to work on that, like you would really have something there.
Yeah, it's, I mentioned, do we see the Bucks moving up in this draft? I think they'd love to, but it's the age-old conversation we've had in the past of, okay, what are the assets you're attaching to move up? Because they don't have it. I mean, Frank brought it up too. Is it like Andre Jackson Jr.? If you could get a second-round pick for him and kind of recycle that, maybe. But I mean, we've already see Ajax is out in Greece working out with Giannis, so maybe there's an expanded role coming for him this upcoming season. But I am curious to see who's going to be on the board and what the Bucks do with that 47th pick. They also, any fans that were wondering, we talked about the disappointment of how, man, not a lot happened last night. I did not expect anything to happen for the Bucks going into round one. Just given the lay of the land, number one, but I think the Bucks themselves tipped their hands too when they set out to the media, we are going to hold a gathering for the draft, but just night two, that the media are invited to attend at the facility here, and John Horst to be available for questions. We are not doing anything after night one. So you're like, oh, so nothing's happening. I don't have to wait for, I wonder if the Bucks are going to move into the first round. So I guess that's our answer. TBD on what we're going to do for tonight. I know Frank had mentioned, hey, if something happens, I'm down to record. If it's a night like we saw tonight, I don't know how we're going to handle this. And especially if there's no move made by the Bucks. I mean, we've already put 5 episodes this week out there. So if it's an uneventful night, we may not have a show for you tomorrow, or it may just be a quick recap or solo show or something. But if something happens, we will, at the very least, have Frank to get his perspective on that and to have a recap from there. That'll do it for today's show. For Camille, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again on Locked On Bucks.